What's up, nerds? I'm Wesley, and I'm having a panic attack. So, as a few of you might remember, 8 years ago, I designed and built 2 gigantic chandeliers. The first was for a burger place here outside of Dallas. It was 9 feet tall, was composed of 800 beer bottles, and I believe it is the world's largest beer bottle chandelier. I haven't been able to verify that officially, but if you work for Guinness, drop into my DMs. The second was for a chicken place next door. It measured almost 11 feet wide, weighed about 400 pounds, and consisted of 175 mason jars and more than 2,000 hand-linked beer bottle caps. There are videos on both of these, by the way, links below. Those 2 projects are among the biggest and are still possibly the most complicated things I have ever built. I have never experienced so much stress before or since. Imagine waking up every morning with a sand crawler parked on your chest. That is why I vowed never to build another enormous chandelier ever again. So when the same client called me up and asked me to make another one for a new bar opening in a few weeks, I hung up the phone. Then called my metal supplier and ordered almost $1,500 worth of materials. The bar is going to be in Oklahoma City, so the concept for the chandelier is a giant tornado. Natch. I've already sent a mock-up to the client, which they have approved, but I am not 100% happy with it. From the front, it looks okay, but from the side, it doesn't really look like much. And fusion is not really conducive to freeform sculpting, so once again, I have turned to my beloved Thunder Laser, which is helping me solve the problem. I've used it to cut out a bunch of half-inch foam core that I'm going to use to make a 1/6 scale model of the tornado, a tornadito. Each of these discs represents one tier on the chandelier, which is going to end up being a ring of 3-inch wide aluminum bar. These slots will allow me to slide them back and forth and rotate them around, find a profile I'm happy with. Thunder Laser, once again, helping me to prototype an otherwise overwhelming project. And one requirement of the installation is that it be rigid, nothing hanging from chains this time. One whole side of the bar is going to be these big garage doors that are going to open up. So they're concerned about wind making things swing around overhead, turning a fake tornado into a real hazard. So all of these tiers are going to be mounted to a central 4-inch aluminum column. Right, so that is basically what the chandelier looks like as it stands. But I want to try to give it a little more visual appeal from this angle. But I'm going to do that off camera, and we're going to skip to some fabrication because I'm probably going to have to play with it for a little while before I'm satisfied. Stop it. This is the temporary mount that I'll be using to hang the chandelier from while I work on it here in the workshop. As you can see behind me, I've already put in some time building a giant frame to hang it in. I've only got 2 gussets on this just because of the way it's got to fit up here. I'll probably put more on the permanent one that goes in the bar, but the whole chandelier is aluminum and weighs less than 250 pounds anyway, so this should be more than adequate. Anybody remember that old Crazy Glue commercial? Ah! Oh, it just became a Neosporin commercial. Oh, that one went in and back out again. I have to keep in communication with the architect throughout this whole process, by the way, because they are building the bar while I'm building this. The actual ceiling this is going to attach to is angled, and they've got to make sure that this clears everything, and they're currently working out how they're going to have to reroute ducting and wiring and stuff so this doesn't run into anything. Once they get it all worked out and tell me how long this needs to be and how wide the base and all that stuff, they're going to let me know, and then I will make the permanent one and send it to them, and they're going to install it in advance so it's ready when I get there. Also, the central column is a bit loose when it goes around this, so I pringled some washers, and I'm just taping them on here until I can get the bolts through. If it works okay, I'll probably tack weld these on the permanent one. Does anybody else ever take a job just to subsidize a new tool? That is one measurement I forgot to check. See if this would fit under here before I got it on. I got 1/8 of an inch there. Okay, so I hung this up last night, and I immediately realized that this is not plumb. The mount is plumb, but the column is very much not plumb. I think it has to do with the fact that I didn't get the holes for my bolts perfectly aligned, but I went home and I thought about it and I realized this is actually a good thing. When the installers install the permanent mount, I'm not going to be there, so there's no way for me to ensure that gets hung perfectly straight. So some adjustability in this is going to be beneficial. I closed the gap in between up there with those washers. That was really just to prevent the bolts from deforming the tube when they're tightened. But there's still some play in this, and I think I've got an idea how to make use of that and then lock everything in place when I'm done. Now I can simply adjust the appropriate set screw until it's level. And I can lock it in place with a jam nut. And I've got tapped holes on all four sides here, so whenever it's installed in the bar, I can adjust it any direction I need. Got this idea from Brecht. That's right. That's the audience I'm targeting. The well-read scholar who also likes jokes. Sound effects are comical. I wish all my tools had cartoon sound effects. For those of you who are new here, this is called a cleco. It's a hole clamp. It will hold pieces like this together until I am ready to rivet them. One thing I didn't show on the model earlier is that each of these rings is going to be filled with more rings, giving the whole sculpture this swirling, chaotic feel. That's also how I'm going to attach each tier to the central column. Yeah, math! You know what this reminds me of? Remember back in the 90s when everybody was obsessed with fractals? Made a big aluminum Mandelbrot set. So many hours spent on a 486 playing with fractal generators and Kai's power tools. And the whole thing is going to be held together with solid rivets. I am not going to rivet all of these connections now, though. I have to think about transportation. I don't want to rent a big trailer to get this thing up there. So probably the top 3 or 4 tiers, the largest ones, are going to break down into sections. So some of this is going to remain clecoed for now, and I'll just have to rivet the rest when I get it up there. So I've done a number of these large-scale projects at this point, and I have learned that organization and planning are vital, especially when you're working with an indeterminate timeline like I am. Like you guys saw me do with this desk project, I typically start by looking through images, images for inspiration. I looked at hundreds of tornado photos. I looked up what sort of twister-inspired light fixtures other artists might have created, and I pulled some of those into Milanote, where I could create a project board to keep all of my notes together. And then I could start creating my lists. I am a huge proponent of lists. I started with a list of requirements that the client gave me, which then start to flow into ideas. And as I start to get an image in my head for the project, I can sketch that out right in Millinote. Very, very badly. I never really could draw. Then I can attach technical documents, start a spreadsheet to eventually work out a budget. Very important to figure out all the parts and materials you're going to need ahead of time. And always include extra. You will almost always need more than you think. And don't forget any new tools you're going to need. I needed several new tools for this job. By the way, I love this little detail about Millinote. When I name a board, it automatically gives it an appropriate icon. When I named the main board, it automatically gave it a tornado icon. It's nothing vital to the project. I just think it's neat. If you've got a project you're thinking about, big or small, try out Millinote. It's free with no time limit. Just follow the link down below. Now, let's finish this project. Now, unfortunately, just because of the way tubing rollers work, about 4 inches on either end of the material don't get rolled. They remain flat. Normally you would just leave extra and cut that off, but across something like 65 rings that I've got to make, that ends up being a lot of material. So I'm just finishing the ends by hand. Oh, move that over there. Oh. Yep. You know what that sounds like? Sounds like a robot about to sneeze. I'm so tired. Okay, so I've got half of the tiers done at this point, and I'm finally getting down to the size where I can get up off the floor. However, I am also getting down to the minimum diameter for a lot of these that I can run on that tubing roller. So for a lot of these inner rings from here down, I'm going to be switching to 16th inch aluminum sheet, which I will then run through a slip roll. And this is the slip roll, another new toy. It's for doing tighter radiuses, but in thinner materials. A lot of rings. Now I've played with the maquette off camera, like I mentioned before. I made some changes. And I transferred those changes over into Fusion already, and the sculpture dances a little more. It's a little more spirally than it was before, and I'm happy with the way it looks now. So all I have to do at this point is mount all of these rings onto that column over there by myself. And I whipped up this little gadget to hopefully help me position each of the tiers on the column. Oh, shit. Oh, yeah, we're good. We're good, we're good. So, yeah, I got the first tier up there. You see it's not up there anymore. It actually turned out more rigid than I thought it would be, but I knew it was going to need support because it's kind of cantilevered. It's off center. So I was adding these support cables, and I knew it might be a problem, but it was much more of a problem than I anticipated. It ended up yes, appropriately portentous. It distorted it. It was squeezing it more than it was lifting it. So I've had to take it down, which was harder than getting it up there somehow. And I've got it back on the floor, and I'm reinforcing it. And yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm increasing the number of cables from 4 to 6, and I'm reinforcing these circles with threaded rod and EMT conduit. It's not ideal, but it's the truck yard. You guys have seen me do work for other locations, and well, the whole aesthetic is, shall we say, trailer park chic. So, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. Learned that from a Paul Jackman video. All right. Oh, that is much better. Alright, so it's finally starting to look like something. So I thought I'd pause here and show you some of the things I'm doing. I've taped out the X and Y axes of the column here, and I'm using a laser level to align pre-marked positions on each of the tiers. That way I can make sure that they're all rotated properly around the column according to the model. My positioning jig is working fantastically to hold these up while I screw the tiers into the column. And you'll notice I cut a couple of extra pieces of PVC that just clip on to act as spacers. I've also made some clamp-on spacers for the outer perimeter here, and I'm using Rockler's one-handed clamps to squeeze these together. That makes sure that these are spaced exactly 3 inches apart, while I use steel wire to tie them together. That makes sure that all of these, no matter how far out they stick, they're all supported all the way up to the support cables. You may have also noticed down here, I've got the column clamped to this bar. That's just to make sure that it stays plumb. It wants to move off center a little bit because right now, all of these tiers are heavier to one side. But believe it or not, once I get all the rest of the tiers on here, the center of balance for this thing is right down the center of the column. And getting that done could not come soon enough. With the previous chandeliers that I built, I only built individual tiers at one time because that was easier, but that also meant that I never actually saw them put together until they were installed. With this one, having to be rigid, I've got to build it all as one piece, which is a lot harder, but that also means I get to see it complete and I can work out any possible issues with it ahead of time. I left the bottom of this column a little long, by the way, just in case I had any cumulative error. It'll actually end up getting cut flush with the bottom of this last tier. As you can see, I got to a certain point, realized I couldn't fit underneath these anymore, so I'm having to do these bottom tiers one at a time. I'm using thread cutting screws here, by the way. They tap the holes as I run them in. That way I don't have to do a separate tapping operation with all of these, and it'll make reassembly easier. Luckily, I thought ahead and bought this guy so I could fit inside these smaller rings. I usually do a follow-up video to these projects, by the way, over on Patreon. There's a lot more information about my process, a lot more details about the build that I couldn't fit in the main video. Usually goes up about a week after the main video. My patrons are really the ones who keep this channel going, so if you're interested in that sort of thing and other behind-the-scenes videos that I upload over there, there's a link down in the video description. Okay. You know what? No, I think I'll just stay down here for a minute. Let's all take a moment to remember the great Bill Paxton. Okay, so don't go anywhere just yet. Trust me. There is a little bit more work left to be done on this. For example, swirling around this are going to be what I call collaterals, custom models that I just received, courtesy of Wes Swain from GEEKSMITHING. I mean, look at this cow. And look, and this other cow.
Actually, I think that was the same one.
And of course, chandelier typically implies lights. So if you want to see this in person, like I said, it's going to be at the new truck yard location opening soon in Oklahoma City, although I have no idea when. I still don't even know when I'm supposed to be installing this thing. Am I glad I took the job? That's a complicated question. I am happy with the way it turned out, though. In fact, I'm not sure I would object to making another one. Maybe out of brass? I don't know. If you've got the room for it and a big pocketbook, let me know. Who says pocketbook anymore? Please don't forget to give Milanote a try. Follow the link down in the video description. Supporting my sponsors means helping me to keep making these videos. I really appreciate it. Now I'm gonna go get a hamburger. You are special and you are unique.